Good morning, everyone. I'm Aideen Martin from Outdoor Recreation NI, and I'm delighted to present at POMNI's conference. The presentation today will focus on insights and findings from new research, People in the Outdoors Monitor for Northern Ireland, referred to as POMNI for short. I'll give you a short background to the research before handing over to Duncan, a 56-degree insight, who will share the findings. Most of us here today are very aware of the huge benefits of outdoor recreation. However, although these benefits are widely evidenced in general, a lack of specific information for Northern Ireland has made it difficult to provide an accurate picture of the value it brings. And this has made it quite challenging on a number of fronts. So it's made it challenging to demonstrate the contribution of outdoor recreation to the delivery of government department outcomes, put the case forward to increase support for outdoor recreation, measure progress and understand the impact of our investment and our policies and plans, and to make confident decisions on policy and investment regarding outdoor recreation. The lack of specific information on outdoor recreation was acknowledged by the Strategic Outdoor Recreation Group, known as SORG for short. Many of you may be familiar with SORG. You can see the list of organisations on screen there. Essentially, it is a cross-government group with numerous departments, agencies and organisations with an interest in outdoor recreation coming together. SORG very much wanted to address the issue, and it was agreed to support the commissioning of primary research. DAERA funded this in 2020 and 2021. They funded ORNI to lead the project, and ORNI commissioned 56-degree insight to carry out the research. And this work and all of these efforts of SORG and DAERA have really led to the creation of POMNI and the report we have here for you today. You may remember last year we launched 2021 POMNI report. It's very significant as this was the first time we'd ever captured any data for participation in outdoor recreation in Northern Ireland. We've moved on a bit now and completed that research in 2022. So we now have a more robust and complete data set for Northern Ireland with over 6,000 respondents taking part of the research. So this provides us with a huge bank of information and insights like we've never had before in our sector. The research will be carried out every 3 years to enable us to track the changes in behaviour and participation in outdoor recreation. But back to today and focusing on our results today. And with that in mind, I'd now like to hand over to Duncan Stewart to share the findings of POMNI 2022. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Duncan Stewart, and over the next 10 minutes or so I'm going to be presenting the results from a new survey called People in the Outdoors Monitor for Northern Ireland, or POMNI as it's shortened to. I'm from 56-degree Insight, the company who undertook this survey on behalf of a number of survey partners as listed in the slide at the top there. So the survey approach, just as a bit of background, the survey was undertaken on an online approach. We had 6 waves of fieldwork over the period from November 2020 to October 2021, with fieldwork undertaken on the omnibus survey, which is conducted by survey fieldwork company Cognizant, so we did it in partnership with them. Now, every wave of the surveying involved about 1,000 interviews, so a robust sample in itself during each wave, and the survey sample was representative of the population with quotas set to ensure that we got the right mix of demographics by gender, age, socioeconomic status, region of residence, etc. So overall sample of over 6,000 interviews, which provides a really robust database, plus or minus 1% at the overall levels, and an ability to break down the results, for example, by particular demographics, particular geographic areas, as I'll show in the next few slides. Now, POMNI has been designed to measure the benefits of outdoor recreation in relation to programme for government themes, as shown in the slide here. And over the next few slides, I'll be focusing on a number of these areas to show you the sorts of results which we've found around these, some of the, sort of, the kind of key headline findings that have come from the survey. So starting with the POMNI results for physical activity. Okay, so first of all, we asked people about their reasons for taking visits to the outdoors when they did spend time outside. And what we found was that in just over 3 in 5 occasions, exercise or health and fitness was a motivation, as shown, quite 54% to get some exercise, 35% specifically saying I visited the outdoors for health and fitness reasons. We actually asked people about the nature of the activities undertaken, how often they'd been undertaking them, and the level of sort of vigour they'd been undertaking their activities for. And from this, we were able to, by knowing how many visits people were spending, how much time was spent outdoors over a period of time, we were able to estimate that around about a third of the Northern Ireland adult population meet the Chief Medical Officer's physical activity guidelines for adults during outdoor recreation visits. And that proportion, it's a third across the whole population, 33%, but it does vary between different demographic groups. So this chart shows some of that ability of the POMNI survey to break things down by different demographics. So we can see, for example, it's somewhat higher amongst the more affluent socioeconomic groups, the ABC ones, than the DEs. It's higher amongst the least deprived areas. People live in the least deprived areas and the most deprived areas. It's higher in urban areas than rural areas, and it's also higher amongst men than women. So we can see some differences there, some possible inequalities related to that. Now moving on to health and well-being, another of the key areas of interest. Now again, we asked people about their reasons for taking visits, and so you can see that relatively high proportions, over a third of visits, stated that they took their visits to the outdoors to relax and unwind, but also a number of other reasons for taking visits related to well-being, to find peace and quiet, to feel revitalised, or to spend time with family, friends, or other people, given as reasons for taking part in outdoor visits. And when we asked people about the outcomes again from visits, that was also really revealing. And so we can see, 2 statements. We asked people whether or not they agree with these, and we found that over half of people agreed that the visits that they'd taken either made them feel calm and relaxed or made them feel refreshed and revitalised. In fact, when you look at these 2 statements together, 77%, over 3/4 of visit takers agreed with one or other of these statements. But again, there are some variations across demographics. So it's interesting with this particular measure that the variations aren't significant. So this suggests that the well-being benefits are fairly consistent across different socioeconomic groups, across urban and rural residents, across men and women. Moving on to the next area, sort of the environmental side of things. So what we saw here was that overall, when we asked about the motivations, about 2 in 5 visits taken were related to nature as a benefit, so either to spend time in nature or to enjoy scenery or wildlife. And also we asked about the benefits of visits taken. So you can see here that overall 28% of people who have taken visits to the outdoors reported that they felt closer to nature because of this experience. But interestingly, that was quite a lot higher in certain settings. So for example, 41% of people who visited a woodland felt closer to nature, 41% if it was a mountain, hill or moorland as well. Also higher proportions for river or lake or country park visits as well. And this is all really important. The chart at the bottom of this slide is results from the Continuous Household Survey from 2017-18. And what that showed us was that the more frequently that someone takes visits to the outdoors, the higher their level of concern for the natural environment. So there are some proven links that we can see about people spending time outdoors, connecting with nature and becoming maybe more aware of environmental concerns and more caring for the environment. And the next area, economics. So obviously an important element of the value of outdoor recreation could potentially be the economic spend. So on average, we asked people how much money they spent, if any, on their most recent visit to the outdoors. The average across all visits was £7. But we can do some calculations here. We can apply that to our estimate of the total numbers of visits taken by the whole population, over a whole year. And we get to some large figures, as you can see on the left there, in terms of total spend during visits. Now, what was that spend on? We also asked questions on that. So you can see about a third of spend typically was to buy fuel for a vehicle when a car was used for the journey. almost a third on food and drink, and then a breakdown, smaller proportions on admission fees, maps and guidebooks, transport fares, car parking, etc. So you can see the distribution of spend there. Now, an important area that the survey covers is we're trying to understand to what extent there may be barriers in the way or factors which stop people from spending as much time outdoors as they would like to. So an interesting area that we've covered is we ask people to rate their local green spaces a number of different dimensions. So you can see in the chart here, the green bars are the people who are agreeing with different statements. That the majority of people do agree that the local green spaces are within easy walking distance or are a high enough standard to want to visit, that their facilities meet their needs, and that they feel safe when visiting local green spaces. In general, about 2/3 to 3/4 agreeing with these statements. However, we did find, though, that again, there were lower ratings, there were variations within the population for these particular measures, lower ratings amongst women, unemployed people, people with a disability, and residents of rural areas. And we also asked people more broadly, what were the reasons for not visiting the outdoors more often? Not surprisingly, given the fieldwork period, COVID-19 rules or concerns were top of the list. But bad weather also features, often is the case in these sorts of surveys, unfortunately. But interestingly, worries about safety, almost a quarter saying that they were worried about safety. 21%, almost 1 in 5, around 1 in 5 concerned about where they could go. So some suggestions around sort of access issues there. Okay, in terms of the sort of final set of results I'll show you in this sort of quick presentation today, we of course were interested in the extent to which the pandemic had influenced or impacted upon people's time spent outdoors. So in each of our 4 waves of surveying, we asked the respondents whether or not they were spending more time or less time outdoors than they had been doing before the pandemic, or whether there was no change in participation. And what we've found is, a real polarized picture. Early in the pandemic, we had, the dark blue bars on the left, higher proportions of people saying they decreased time outdoors, but we also had proportion of people saying they'd increased time. But there's a real diversity in terms of the groups who gave those different responses. But increasingly, as we've moved into more recent periods, you can see that no change in participation bars have become larger as people have returned more to their normal visit-taking frequencies and behaviours. The demographic differences are really significant in this one though. So people most likely to have increased time outdoors during this overall period are the younger and people who work full or part-time. People with no change more likely to be the oldest age group, retired and men. People most likely to say that they've decreased time outdoors, more likely to be women, unemployed people, and people with a long-term illness or disability. Possibly, certainly in that latter case, it may be the case that these are people most likely to have been shielding or concerned about spending time outdoors during parts of the pandemic. Now, what we can see, and we've looked further afield, there's some sort of interesting connections with the data collected in England and Scotland by other organisations. So, for example, we see Natural England's latest study found that overall there was a sort of 41% of people stated they'd increased time outdoors over the pandemic period, so slightly higher than we're seeing in our survey. However, in Scotland, what we did see is a real mixed picture. One of the key findings was that there was a degree of pent-up demand with people spending more time outdoors post-pandemic, but this was more so amongst people who work from home more often, so an interesting connection there. And we can see in our results, people who work full or part-time are more likely to spend time outdoors. It could well be a connection with people having more flexibility in order to do a walk or a run during their lunchtime from home when they're working from home. And as people move more to hybrid working, it may be that becomes sort of a longer term trend as we see more people spending at least part of their time working from home compared to pre-pandemic. So that's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour through some of the key results, and it's very important to say we're just really scraping the surface there, and it's really important to say also that there's a full report available on the ORNI website, or available shortly, as well as some other sort of special analysis that we've undertaken or will be undertaking, looking at areas such as comparing urban and rural residents, looking at the results in relation to socioeconomic status, deprivation, and so on. So the number of different ways that we can look at the results because of the big sample size, which should be very useful. Also at a geographical level, we'll soon be able to provide results at the more local authority level. So I think the key message here is to please use POMNI, be aware of POMNI, look at the results now, and if you can't see the findings cut in the way that you would like to, get in touch, because there's a lot of potential to use the results further, and just as it says there, make the most of POMNI. Thank you very much.
There was a lot of information shared by Duncan in that presentation, so I'd like to take a moment to focus on the key takeaways or insight from his presentation. Each of these are illustrated in graphic form, and you can see an example on screen. And Orne will be sharing these graphics on Twitter and other social media platforms today and in the days and weeks to come. So very much would ask each of you to share far and wide. So in terms of participation, 7 in 10 adults visit the outdoors for leisure each week, and that represents 144 million visits. Most common activities are short walks, dog walking, spending time with children and running. However, access to green space is not equal across the population, with rural areas suffering the most. People who live within a shorter walk of green space, so closer to green space in their area where they live, visit the outdoors more. People recognise the benefits of outdoor recreation in terms of mental and physical health, as well as connecting with nature. And lastly, outdoor recreation makes a significant economic contribution each year to the Northern Ireland economy. So that's the last of the graphics. So there's 6 key takeaways or graphics. So as I said, please share on your social media platforms after the conference today. The most important aspect is, of course, what we do with the data from today onwards. So we would strongly encourage you to use the research and insights in your funding applications, in your decision making, when you're developing plans and strategies within your organisation. This is key information to help guide you. Orne too will be using the POMNI data, so we're delighted to hear that an update of the Outdoor Recreation Action Plan is included within the draft environment strategy developed by DERA. So this is fantastic news, and the POMNI data will be absolutely central to this process and will inform any changes in those plans. And just let you know, in addition, that Orne currently have a facilitation role in the development of the National Outdoor Recreation Strategy for Ireland. That's on behalf of the Department of Rural and Community Development in Corlin na Tuatha in the south. And this too will help guide the content of the Outdoor Recreation Action Plan. But essentially, we are here to support you with this information and to help you use it. We'll be putting all of the data reports on the Orne website, and I know the link is being put into the chat now by Kerry. We will also be doing further communication to a range of stakeholders and audiences and policymakers. But 2022 will be very much about further analysis as well of using the data that we already have. As we've got such robust data, we do have the ability to do in-depth analysis looking at geographic splits. So we plan to look at each council areas and the particular participation levels there, rural versus urban, areas of deprivation, disability, and so on. But please ask for help or support if you need. We're here and very keen for people to use the data. Thank you for your time today. I'm going to leave you with this slide, which calls out the Orne vision, which is a more active and healthy society appreciating the outdoors. And furnished with this new information and evidence that we've shared with you today, really what this is a call for all of us to harness the energy and momentum to really realise this vision of a more active and healthy society in Northern Ireland. Thank you.